Hello, everyone. I'm Eva Yazhari, the CEO of Beyond Capital Fund. I am joined today by Anshul Sharma, co-founder and co-CEO of Redwing Labs, one of the most recent investments in the Beyond Capital portfolio that is changing the game when it comes to drone healthcare delivery in India. Welcome, Anshul. It's great to have you.
Thank you so much, Eva, for having me over here. Very excited to do this.
Thank you. And it's great to speak to you from so far away during this time, but it's been incredible to get to know your company and all the work that you're doing, both on the tech side and on the impact side. And this nexus is where we are very excited to be funding at Beyond Capital. So diving in, tell us what Redwing does and what problems you're solving.
Sure. So Redwing, we're basically building an autonomous logistical system by using drones for healthcare. We are seeing that this system will basically deliver any healthcare product as long as it's weighing under 2.5 kgs of volume or by weight. And we can deliver that product within a time period of about 90 to 120 minutes, regardless of the geographical location of the person. This type of logistical system is really the first time in which um, a logistical system doesn't need to depend on the infrastructure of a particular region. We're completely infrastructure agnostic, or we're completely autonomous, and at the same time, we're completely electric as well. And we're doing all of this by really using drones as the backbone in a hub and spoke manner in the tech layer, and then combining all other subsequent technologies to really make a marriage of robotics and aviation happen, basically in this field. That's briefly, what's we've been doing.
Absolutely. And what are some of the healthcare products that you are delivering and why necessarily are they needed?
Sure. So the interesting thing about healthcare, what most people don't realize is that the the element of cold chain, which is what we're all currently seeing out in the media news and everything as well, is perhaps one of the most um, difficult challenges to solve in modern logistical part as well. And that's purely because how complex the entire cold chain process is. Right from the manufacturer till the point it comes down to the end hospital, there are typically between 6 to 7 layers or warehouses really involved, because the product really starts from the manufacturing facility, then moves to a state region, then moves to a district region, then moves to a last mile center, and then to your end hospital per se. So there are multiple layers involved. The element with cold chain, what happens is that since there are so many layers involved, all layers basically need to have cold chain. You need to have cold chains while stocking up those inventory at these individual warehouses, and you need to maintain cold chain while you are transferring from point A to point B within those warehouses as well. And that's a really expensive process, and that's where the wastage element or the write-offs basically that pharmaceutical companies face, that hospital chain providers face, and in the end the patient suffers as well, really happens. How we're really solving for all of this primarily is by introducing a very simple concept called virtual cold chain. Virtual cold chain is like me telling you that if you need an ice cream, you don't need to have a refrigerator in your house, because I will be delivering that ice cream to you on demand while maintaining cold chain by using drones. And now you're importing that same analogy and putting in the healthcare perspective. That since we're delivering, products like blood, vaccines, tuberculosis samples, cardiac medicines, and multiple other cold chain specific cancer medicines and multiple other cold chain specific products, it really the end hospitals don't need to, number one, stock up inventory at the last mile, and number two, don't need to have that expensive cold chain infrastructure which you need to maintain those different temperature ranges for different categories of product. So that's what we've probably been doing.
Have you invented the concept of virtual cold chain, or is this something that exists in other industries?
Virtual cold chain has the academic concept has existed for a while, but to bring it out in this fashion, um, uh, by using drones, I think we would like to think that we're the first one till now, basically. But the academic concept has existed for a while. That how can you build out virtual cold chains, basically.
Absolutely. So, how will this seed round help you grow and expand the company?
The seed round of capital is giving us a runway of easily anywhere between 18 to 24 months. Now, when you zoom out and now when you look at the space and point of time that we are in, both from the context of one, the drone delivery space, and secondly, the healthcare space, basically, I think the timing couldn't have been much better. And that's primarily due to that this is a space in which there is a marriage of impact and deep tech, meaning that we're not basically selling an enterprise software. We're basically building these incredibly complex logistical systems with each and every of our customer segments, which exists in pharmaceutical companies, which exists with hospital chain providers, which exists with governments, foundations, and multiple other entities together. So the seed round primarily, number one, will make sure that we are as compatible as with our one or two global competitors, namely Zipline from the US. And secondly, since there is tailwind already in the market, we will be basically capturing it with doing initial layers of pilot, converting them to a little bit more longer term projects, and then scaling it from there on, basically. So I think that the number one, the timing of it really helps us do it really well. If this was 2 years later or 2 years before, um, it might have been tricky, basically. But I feel from the context of where we are in the space right now, with healthcare, with aviation, with robotics, it's a great time to basically do this element. And secondly, the seed round will also give faith to all the domestic companies which have always stacked up against our other well-funded competitors, basically. I think that really gives us an opportunity to do multiple pilots, showcase different use cases with different categories of pharmaceutical products in these pharma companies. And while all of this is happening in the back end, you have the entire immunization program, which is getting rolled out into countries with COVID. And that immunization program is anyways going to last between anywhere for a year to 2 years to 3 years, and maybe even more. Yeah, I think there's definitely a great opportunity for us to just plug into the current, flow which is currently happening, and take advantage of the current situation.
That sounds great. And you mentioned COVID. So, just give me a little bit on how that's changed your business. We were looking at your company before this pandemic hit us on a global scale.
Yeah, I think so. To be very realistic, drone delivery has been very contextual in the space of healthcare. The general notion what drone delivery can do with healthcare, sorry, has always been the notion that drones can deliver and solve for time. That means if anyone can have a cardiac arrest, drones will want to deliver emergency medicines. So the narrow lens to look at things was only for the segment of basically emergency window part. But what has really happened with COVID distribution is that the the complex nature of how a cold chain infrastructure supply chain of a healthcare system really operates has now become a much more open in the public eye. Normal people basically care about what is happening in the supply chain, or are just aware that how sensitive or how essential it is to have an agile and robust healthcare supply chain, basically. And and what has happened really is that um, when bigger changes need to happen, institutions need to change their thinkings and need to have hardwire mandates basically in them. And COVID has basically done that. It has brought the institutional level thinking, which was earlier existing within a certain category of people, but now becoming much more widespread, basically. And we've seen it with all of our experience in the past 6 to 8, 9 months, basically, in which there is one category of companies which want to do it immediately, and these exist from anywhere delivering groceries to delivering newspapers to delivering, all sorts of e-commerce logistics supplies that want to use drones immediately. That's one category of companies. The second category of companies are are basically the ones who were early adopters. They already knew about this technology. They were working towards integrating it in the supply chain. But now, with COVID, it's becoming more serious for them, and it has um, led to that level of basically process-driven supply chain analysis and then plugging into the equation. And the third layer of companies are really the ones, or customers, who are really the ones who have been very early adopters in the space, basically. And they were already prepared, basically. So the people who are already prepared, they are much more ahead in basically adopting this technology, and everyone is playing that catch up game as compared to the ones. So yeah, I think that's been the overall broader landscape of things. And now it's not a question of if, now it's a question of when, basically. And yeah, that's been the overall currents over here.
Great. And before I let you go back to running your business, I want to ask you two questions for our supporters and followers to get to know you a little bit better. As a leader, what are you reading right now? And it doesn't have to be a business book.
Sure. I'm reading actually Ayn Rand right now. Just started reading it up. That's an interesting one. I think I'll take some time to finish it up.
Mhm.
I'm secondly more into podcasts. One of my favorite podcaster right now is Naval Ravikant, basically from AngelList, who's the founder of AngelList, the US. I think it's incredible to get his perspective, and also closely follow Chamath Palihapitiya as well. I think those two are doing some incredibly good work on basically um, being a comforting voice to younger founders building long-term hard tech problems, basically, which yeah, has that longer gestation period and harder hardwiring of the other problem statements. So that's been really great, basically.
Great. And last question, it is not easy to be an entrepreneur. I get to have the bird's eye view of being an entrepreneur in many ways as an investor. And we're coming out of an unprecedented year. What is giving you hope right now?
I think um, I think number one is um, the pure factor that when when crises usually strike, basically organizations huddle up and things align to basically solve those pain points, basically. um, the the pure element of if the pandemic would have struck 10 years before, it would have been really difficult to basically everyone to manage the same situation as it has been, basically. But it coming in 2020, it's been a humbling moment, basically, to one, realize the agility of and the importance of healthcare systems. That's one part. And secondly, also the pure realistic grit and the pure realistic execution from different regulators throughout the industry. For us specifically, when I look at the regulators in both aviation and healthcare, and the amount of progress which has happened in the past 6 to 9 months, basically, it's been incredible. And that is, the definition of hope, I think, when you get more progress, basically, from the regulators' end. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for starting a long-term business that will have an incredible impact. And it's an absolute pleasure to be involved.
Sure. Thank you so much, Eva. And the pleasure is ours as well.
Thank you.